Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of After Hours with Nia. Today, we have a special guest. He has come up with a four-part process to change your life called the Shadow Code, which actually is an amazing name for something, by the way. And he is a relational coach and trauma therapist. Mark, how are you today, Mark?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here. Nice to see you guys.
Yay! Well, I'm happy to have you. So, relational coach, what exactly does that mean?
Yeah, it's that's funny, the branding, right? I started as a relationship coach, and what I realized through that work of helping people have more harmonious relationships and more connection romantically with other people was there was one thing in common, and it was all about this relationship to yourself. And so relational is, I think, a broader term that I like to incorporate now, meaning that everything is a relationship in your life. The relationship that you have with yourself, that you have with your addictions, with the people in your life, with your spirituality, with your body. And so, really, the breadth of the work is, I think, to expand that concept into the way that we relate to everything in our life and the way that we relate to ourselves. So, that's kind of the idea behind relational.
Yeah. So, do you find that people come to originally maybe needing relationship advice, like with their partner, and then it turns into like a self discovery journey?
Totally. I think that that's one of the big struggles for humanity these days. We're all drawn towards love and towards this need for connection with other people, and that's also where we run into the biggest issues in our life with intimacy. At least that's been my journey with it, and I know a lot of people as well. And so it is a great access point to understanding ourselves better and anything that's holding us back from having that kind of connection that we desire in our lives.
What do you think is the starting point for blockages in relationships or relationships with ourselves? Like, where do you think it stems from, or the most common thing that you find?
Hmm. I think it's all about a need, right? Again, we all have this need to connect with others, to connect with intimacy. We're humans, right? So we benefit from being with other people, and there's a genuine need for that there. And I think that what we tend to encounter in relationship is some way that that need is not getting met or not getting expressed. And so that's often a good place to figure out what's stressing you out there about your relationship.
And so, is that where your work with trauma kind of comes into that? So, seeing maybe if their mom or dad didn't meet those needs?
Yeah, it may be mom and dad. It's just anything that has shaped that formation of your idea of connection with others. And so for all of us, right, we start out as babies, and our first instance of love is usually the love we have with our mother or our primary caretaker. And so, you know, we should go back even further than that, really. I mean, you we're talking to you, Miss Reiki, spiritual master. So, I mean, we all come from light, right? We all come from love. We all come from the space of that. And so I think that, by design, we come here to experience separation. And oftentimes that happens shortly after conception or maybe after birth. And so we experience this disconnection from the source of love, which is our mother or our father or whomever that is. And so through that wounding, separating process, we we come away from love, or at least we perceive that we come away from love. And then I think that the journey is to slowly piece that back together and to come back to love with this perspective now that you have
Mhm.
of the totality of everything that's going on here in that process, if that
Like the
makes sense.
like when you're born and you grow up, you forget who you really are, and then throughout your life, you're supposed to remember again. Kind of that kind of goes into what you were saying. I
Yeah,
think
totally.
about this is kind of weird, but I think about death a lot, and kind of originally I was raised kind of religious. I tried a lot of different religions. I was raised kind of by a lot of different people, but Catholicism specifically, the whole like heaven and hell or purgatory, if you sin, then you go to hell. And if you're perfect and never do anything wrong, you go to heaven. And then, having this spiritual awareness that we all just go into whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it heaven or the life after life, life between life, whatever. The whole goal of all these different lives is to become closer and closer and one with source. And it's funny how you kind of brought up birth. So I always think of like the end kind of, and you think of the beginning, even though they're kind of the same thing, which is, we could go into a whole bunch of things with that. So I
Yeah.
see that you are married, correct?
Yes, I am.
Does she
Mhm.
do the same work as you or no?
I would say she does the same work inside of herself as I do, but no, not in terms of coaching or for a professional standpoint.
Do you
But
guys Oh, go ahead.
I will say that each of us are called in our own way to serve, right, and to have our own purpose. And she, I think, lives such a purpose just by her existence, and you know her involvement in my life and in relationship with me has taught me so much, and really feed the fire and the understanding of relationship for me, and how to bring that to other people, and how to set that example, and how to talk about the pain points of that and the beauty of that. And so to her credit, there's just such a power that she brings to the dynamic without having to actually really step out into the world and express this to other people, um, just by being in relationship with her. So I want to just shout that out.
Oh, that's so beautiful and touching. It's really awesome when there's men in the spiritual community that are willing to speak just in your work and even just what you said just now. Because I think that, a lot of men are very uncomfortable being, I don't know if it's vulnerable or you know what I'm getting at. So it's just really nice to hear that. And as a man, do you ever have people that like tease you, like, oh, you're too sensitive, or you're talking about woo woo stuff?
I don't get it as much anymore, but I think that was a lot of my life. And so, yeah, I think that by default we attract from the level of consciousness that we're at. And so, I think I've owned who I am now, and I understand it, and I know that it's designed to be this way. And so I don't really have a problem with it. I don't really attract. As I say that, I'm sure there'll be some trolls in the comments right now,
Well,
but generally I don't attract that kind of energy. But back when there was like an idea or a self-awareness of my sensitivity, a wound around that where I'm trying to protect that vulnerability. I know that I encountered that a lot more. I somehow, heard people saying that, or making fun of me, or picking on me because I did have a soft heart. And so that's just par for the course for me. That's how I learned to protect myself, and to create these walls and this shell around me as a man. And so then it was the unwinding of that, and seeing the strength and the vulnerability in having an open heart that you recognize as the most valuable asset that you can have.
that's beautiful. And
Yeah.
how did you come into this space of awareness that you're in now? Was it one of those things where you just were always kind of an old soul and you just knew what you were meant to do? Or, what's your story? How did you get to this point?
Yeah, long and winding road. I mean, it kind of was one of those things where I do remember being very young, probably 3 or 4 years old, and just thinking like, what is really going on here, guys?
Yeah.
Do you guys see what's happening? Did you look up at the sky? I remember always being like that, so kind of a deep thinker, and experiencing my own separation from love and from source, and the wounding I had. And I don't think I had like some terrible childhood, but being a sensitive soul, being someone who was called to this type of work, I think I intentionally put myself into these situations to experience that wounding. And I think through the course of my life have come to deeper and deeper realizations of this work. It started with yoga in my early 20s, and just getting into my body, and really feeling the chemistry and the nervous system and the reactions of all the emotions I was having, and all of that on a physical felt level, and how that then kind of went upward into the deeper realizations about relationships, and how we step into the world with other people, and there's this canvas of our body and our experience, and there's this experience that they're having over here, and this experience that we're having collectively, and how I'm playing a part in all of that collective energy, and how then I have this sort of duty, I guess you could say, to show up in a certain way to shape my experience in life, and then also the experience that other people are having, because we're all sort of in this shared dream. And yeah, it's just been beautiful to be a part of that, and to watch that unfold, and to continue to unfold, and to peel back the layers. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any one point where it all kind of came together. It's just been a gradual, consistent deepening into this love space. So I'm excited to see where it goes. Yeah.
Wow. Did you have any type of like mentors or groups that helped you get into this?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I've had many. I think, now that you mention it, I did have a pivotal moment. It was about 5 years ago when I was going through a divorce. And so I was a father. I had course, it was really, really time in my life, and my heart was really broken. And so I definitely sought out therapy. And so I worked with someone who does passive regression therapy, who is very experienced with that. Who's a senior student of Brian Weiss. If anyone knows who he is, he wrote Many Lives, Many Masters, and he touches upon the past life idea. And so that was really instrumental in teaching me about kind of where I've been, and the whole quantum universe that we're in, and our ability to affect our timeline, and to shape our reality. So definitely that experience was very pivotal, and very informational. And then of course I've had other coaches since then, and groups of people mentor me, and to reflect me, and to keep me on track here. So yeah, I definitely find a lot of value in mentorship, and reflections, and positive people in our lives. I think that's, again, it's a relationship. It's what it's all about.
And I love that you brought up past life regressions. I'm very much into past lives. I'm a psychic medium, and so a lot of times I can pick up on those different lives for people or for myself. But I did end up having a past life regression with somebody. Her name is Molly May. She's on Instagram. Eventually, I'll have her on the show as well. And during one of the regressions, I actually went into what they call the life between lives, when you're just in spirit form and you're going through that process. And it was so strange because I had never consciously remembered anything like that. So she's, coaching me through the hypnosis. And I said, I just feel weightless. Like I'm just weightless. Everything is bright. And I see something that I know is my grandfather, but it's not. And then we
Mm,
just started like floating. It was like we were trying to get somewhere, which was interesting.
mm,
I couldn't pick up on too much, but it was like we're in this white space. There's no worries, there's no body, and we're like flying to go to a destination, like in this place. And it was weird because I was like, I have no idea what this is. And she explained to me that sometimes people do see that. And I don't know if it's the same author you were talking about, but the book, oh man, what's it called? Um, Journey of Lives or Journey of Souls or something like that. I feel bad I can't remember, but it's a great book, and he does a lot of hypnosis and past life regression. What I love is he's the type of person who originally was like, the only thing that's real is what you see. I don't believe in this. And then he started doing past life regressions and started being like, wow, everyone is, saying the same things about certain like events, especially if they did go to the life between life where you're kind of in heaven or purgatory, whatever you want to call it. And everyone who could remember that said the exact same things. Like the little tiny
yeah,
details might have been different, but just the fact that multiple people who don't know each other were all kind of seeing the same thing, it's just wild that through this work in different ways, you're finding proof of things that aren't scientifically proven, or at least not proven publicly. And I think that that to me is so awesome because when you do spiritual work, it's like you're a therapist, a scientist, there's kind of no limit. And so sometimes it's hard to label yourself something. Like I know you say you're like a relational coach and trauma
right.
therapist, trauma specialist, but you're really so many other things too.
We're all so many things, right? It's very interesting. I think that there's many, spirit offers us many tools to access these states that we need to see and to visit into it. There's definitely something like really sexy about past lives. I think these days it's really um, and like I don't pretend to know exactly what that is, right? I think that science has got us to the point where we understand that there's like a big quantum universe going on, and that there's really no past, there's really no future. It's all right now. And yet, we have these experiences and these reflections of other lifetimes that may have happened in the past, or maybe they're happening concurrently now, and there's information there. And so all I know is that when you bring it back to the now and how to actually change your life and to feel better, make different choices, and attract the things that you want into your life, a lot of times like our mind, our heart is drawn back to these experiences to understand little bits of information, ideas that maybe we forgot about, or gifts that we've had, people that we've known that then give us a different perspective on our life now. And so that stuff is really valuable. That's something that I've found a lot of value in, and I think that is really cool to talk about. Yeah.
Actually, I just remembered the name of the book is Journey of Souls. That's what it is. And I do past life readings, and I almost want to call them soul journey readings because I think it is just learning more about who you are, kind of why you are the way that you are. For if you do believe literally that these past lives are real, for
Mhm.
instance, maybe if you drowned in a past life, it would explain why you're scared of water in this life. So it
Mhm.
definitely can be really useful. And even if it is just subconscious mumbo jumbo, it's not real, it still helps people. So at the
Yeah.
end of the day, I don't even care.
That's the point. If it gives you something positive to help you in your life now to feel better, then beautiful, whatever. It's
And
awesome.
speaking of water, is it true, and I'm sorry if this is traumatic, but is it true that you and your wife almost like drowned in the ocean?
Yeah, yeah, totally. That's another pivotal moment in my journey. I think that was only 2 years ago, and so we were in Costa Rica, and we just, it was a beautiful day. We had the beach all to ourselves, and we decided to go for a swim in the ocean. And it was just like that. All of a sudden she's screaming, and I hear her, and I'm like kind of like floating there, and I'm like, wait, is she serious? Like, what's going on? And I'm like, okay, she is serious. So I at that moment I realized like we're being swept deep into the ocean, into some rip current. um, I've always been a strong swimmer. Like I was actually a lifeguard in college, and so like this was like next level, and I was like had this such a quick shock of like, oh my god, I'm about to die right now. Like I'm about to die right now. This is like the craziest thing ever. And so like I remember like praying in that moment as I'm keeping my head above the water, like God, this is you know can you bring me out of this? Like, is this how it's supposed to go? Like, and then I just heard this voice like reminding me, it's like, turn on your back, float. And so I turned on my back, and I just like I realized, okay, this doesn't have to be so hard. I don't have to drown here. And so I float closer to her, and I remember grabbing her hand and like helping her relax, and like just bringing us gradually into the shore. And man, that's one of those moments where you realize, wow, can the lights can just go out like that, and we really need to be grateful for our time here, because we never know when that's going to be over, right? And then the second thing I realized from that was that, you know, even when it seems really bleak and like the world is against you and like it's life or death, um, that it actually isn't. You're not as disempowered as you think you are a lot of times. I think we've all been in those places where we feel like we have no resource, where like we're drowning literally. And sometimes it's as simple as just like letting yourself float and realizing, yeah, hey, this is a journey and this is really powerful. And God is teaching you something, but at the same time, like you're supported, and you're in the current of life. And if you just let yourself float on your back, you can relax. You can soften your muscles, and yes, go in that direction and keep your eyes open and keep your awareness focused on what your goal is here. But let yourself float into that shore, because if you try to do it for yourself and you try to exert all that energy, it doesn't matter how strong you are. Eventually, you're going to get tired and you're going to go under. And so I think that that's such a beautiful realization that I had that day. The third thing was that I would die to save this woman. And that was that was the big test for me because um it sounds selfish, but I think like I've always felt like, all right, well, if it's me or you, I gotta save myself, right? Because it's just the way our ego works. And we all want to think that we would do something else, but when you're in that situation, there's a lot of trauma going on. And in that moment, I realized like I did not want to live if I could not have her there, and that uh, I could not live with that weight of knowing that I could have saved her, or at least attempted to save her, because I didn't know if I could or not. But if I didn't at least try to and risk my life in the process of doing that, that would not be congruent with my purpose and my path here. And so there was like this big risk of like, expending the extra energy to go towards her, to grab her and to hold her, as she's flailing to come in there. But that was important. And so I think, yeah, that's just the whole idea that we're all in this together, that, we can save ourselves, but it's kind of lonely, um, if that's all we're focused on, and that we're supported, that we have everything we need, that we can just let this happen and float together back to the shore. You get there, and once you have that beautiful perspective of like, oh, I'm so glad I had all of this quote unquote trauma or these stressful experiences in my life, because they've taught me so much, and they've shown me the gratitude that I have now for the life I have, and for being able to see that sunset and to experience the water like this and to be in this beautiful space is just, it's magic, right? And I think that like if we can get ourselves to that space in each and every moment, like there is no more suffering. It's just right.
Beautifully said. And that story is so crazy. But the ocean is just like that. It's beautiful and it's great, but it can take you away in a second. Wow. I've got
Like
like,
life. Yeah, and I mean I should also mention too, like it's like we've had I sometimes wonder, why I had that experience, and like I've had flashbacks to it just in our relationship. Moments that, things are stressful or something like that, or she's like having a moment and it feels like survival, right? And there's like that flood of the hormones, and like recognizing, hey, you're not alone in this, you know, that this can be easy, and that you don't need anyone to save you either, like either of us. And like if we take it back to relationships, it's like we're in this together, and yet at the same time, like we're both capable of doing this ourselves. Um, but at the same time, it's beautiful to float together back to the shore.
I'm grateful that obviously you guys made it out okay. And that's a really powerful experience to share with someone. But do you think it definitely did carry some trauma after the fact, even though you had these beautiful epiphanies and everything? Was it still kind of scary to like go back in the water?
She definitely felt that way for a while. I think she's only now just started getting back in the ocean. I mean, honestly, for me, it just kind of was more confirmation. Like you're supported, and like, yeah, don't be stupid, but like, I'm gonna keep putting myself out there and taking risks, and just understand that like we're here to have an adventure. So that's where I landed with it.
That's good. That's good. So part of your work, you do incorporate like some energy work as well, right?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, so I'm a Reiki master. I'm also a Reiki master teacher. And it's been an interesting journey with that, because I definitely started out with manipulating the chakras and finding the energy blockages in the body, and like I said, I'm a yoga teacher, and so there's like a somatic experience to that as well, and that was part of the process of understanding the depth of the work that I do now. um, I think that one of the biggest epiphanies I had in the energy work was this idea that there's no such thing as darkness for me. And this is going to be a controversial opinion, I think.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, like I think as light workers, if you want to call it that, we are focused on that light and dispelling darkness. And some people, though they may be really well intentioned, might hyper focus on light and then bypass some of the traumatic experiences that we share. And so for me, especially with my own healing journey, going deeper into the unconscious part of myself, into the, let's say, anger, shame, fear, all of these negative emotions, going into that space held the key to like the greatest healing epiphanies and love on the other side of that. It was almost like the affinity for only the light and only the good things was keeping me. It's almost like behind that mindset was a fear that I can only experience this, and I should not look in the direction of something else other than that. And when you realize how powerful you are and that you're a part of this God energy, and that means this non-duality, that this perceived separation of light and dark, you're just cutting it down in half. And so if you really if you really want to that full potential, you've got to embrace all of that. And oftentimes what we deem to be the darkness is actually just a scared child inside of us who wants to be loved, not fought against, and not told to go to your room or you know something more
Yeah.
damaging. And so when I took that approach to the work of really leaning into those places that people didn't want to go to, that I may didn't really want to go to, that felt like, oh shit, we got to go here again. That's when really a lot of the breakthroughs happened to me, and for my clients. And so I can't go back now. I really leaned into the shadow work, and it's interesting because it is all in the name of love, and it all leads us back to light. But it's this idea that by clinging to the light, we somehow, you know, pass the beautiful experience of being, of having human emotions and experiences. And just like I spoke about with the ocean and almost drowning, having that experience gave me such a perspective that I'm almost grateful that I had, instead of just having a beautiful day at the beach.
Hmm. Yeah, shadow work is everything. You have to shine light on the dirt in order to see it and clean it up. You can't just sweep it under the rug, sweep it under the rug. You're going to end up falling over the rug. So I completely agree.
Great
It's
way to.
Thank you. And I've been through a lot of trauma in my life, a lot of hard times, and really what has come out of it is that I'm more compassionate. Um, I could say stronger. I don't kind of like saying like, "Oh, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger." I mean, it does, but it definitely leaves a scar too. And but I think it does. It gives you more compassion because if you can come out of it, you see how other people are struggling. Like, I used to think like, "Oh, that person said that mean thing to me. They're just a bad person." But really,
Mhm.
that person is in so much pain. That person needs love the most. And although it's not my job to save them, a simple smile or understanding or some love their way could make a huge difference for them.
Totally, totally, and I think for a lot of us empaths, some healthy boundaries too.
That's something I learned along the way, definitely.
And you said something interesting too about strength, because I think that there's two ways to look at that. And the part about, I need to be strong and like armored, like that's one thing. And I don't actually see that as strength. I see that as protection,
Mm.
as trying to keep yourself safe from something, which is actually the opposite of strength. Strength to me is the vulnerability, right? To be able to hold space, like you said, for another being who's going through a hard time, who may not be showing up in the way that feels good to you, but to understand that there's a mirror there for you. There's a trigger happening inside of you that's in reaction to them, and there's a part of them that they're representing in you. And that's a beautiful opportunity for you to heal that, to lean into that, to open your heart towards that vulnerability that is so easy to just contract away from and to armor up and turtle shell and to hide. So yeah.
One thing that I think about a lot, um, so we're all each other's mirrors, right? Or we're all one at the end of the day. So a lot of times if I meet somebody or if I'm around someone and they have this trait about them that I strongly dislike, or maybe it triggers me, or I just for some reason just maybe they gossip too much, right? I'm like, oh, this person's a gossip. I don't like it. I always reflect on myself and I'm like, do I gossip? Am I noticing that that's unattractive on them and it's probably unattractive on me? You know what I mean? So anything I see about somebody that I don't like, I look at myself and I'm like, where do I do this? Where can I work on my own thing?
Hmm. Yep. 100%.
But it's also
Well,
it's hard to see it in the moment though too. I think sometimes we're just talking or we're just doing something. We don't really have always have that awareness of how you come off.
it's hard to see it in the moment for sure. And what I say to that is, if you make a commitment to yourself to feel good, and by extension of that, to notice the ways in which you don't feel good, to notice when you're in relationship with someone and you don't feel good, when you're in a conversation or a job and you don't feel good, you know, to instead of being the victim, instead of blaming somebody else, to just like to make that commitment to step back and understand what is that inside of you, what emotion is coming up, right? Where does that come from, and what part did you play in that? How did you get here? You know, so when we can take that conscious approach and more so that commitment to it, then we're going to have, far more positive results, I think, in the healing process. Because again, yeah, we're going to go around the world, we're going to trigger, things are going to happen, we're going to feel bad. And I think part of just being a conscious person versus unconscious is just that intention behind it, the commitment that you make to yourself to continue to grow and to continue to open your heart.
That
And
makes
it's
me
not perfect, right? It's not, it doesn't mean you're perfect. Doesn't mean you're you're like Jesus. You're never gonna, right? You're gonna continue to make mistakes.
Yeah, that made me think of one of the things you said made me think of like somebody who's in a job and they just hate this job, their boss is mean, and then they just stay in it for years and years. And it's kind of like you have to ask yourself, what is making me stay? Is it the money? Am I scared to not have money? Is it that I don't think I can have a better job? Kind of like looking at what is keeping me in this uncomfortable space. And then that's when you can start doing the healing work. Oh, I think we lost you. Your screen is black. Oh
Yeah.
boy. Oh,
Oh,
there you
okay.
go. Yay. Did you hear me or did it like cut out?
Yeah, no, I was hearing you. So yeah, it's so important to ask yourself those questions and to recognize like you are a creator. I think that that's one of the biggest takeaways from the healing work is like that you're a creator, that everything in your life is happening for you. You know,
Mm.
and not in some spiritual bypass way, but that actually everything is because you're choosing it. And if you don't like something, it's time to choose something else. And if you're not willing to choose something else, then you maybe need to sit with that feeling and to understand why you're not doing that.
I like that, the whole idea of well, the truth, not idea, but that everything is happening for you. And I like that you said not in a spiritual bypassing way, because, my partner was diagnosed with cancer a couple months back. And of course, it's horrible. I mean, just awful. But it really was happening for him because a lot of things ended up coming to the surface. Now he sees the habits that he can't continue to partake in, or even just revealing the character of people around him. Like he's just had such a spiritual awakening because of it. So I think the most powerful thing that people can do is to sit in the darkness, you know,
Yeah.
and see that, wow, it actually is happening for me. Instead of crying, feeling sorry for myself, how can I really dig deep into this and learn something from it? So, what I've seen a post that says, like, not asking why this is happening to me, but asking like what it's teaching me. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think it's a big thing to do, but it's little things like that that if a person is capable of doing it, can make huge changes in their life.
Yeah. If they're capable, I mean, of course they're capable if they're willing to do it. And I do like that we frame this in the container of spiritual bypass, and because while that ultimately happens as the result, and I would hope that somebody would get to that space eventually. Like I'm sure that if you are going through like there's a process there, and I think that it's so easy to rush that the healing idea there that this is happening for you and what do you need to learn from this, and just going through that and facing that potential end of their life, like I imagine that would be extremely scary,
Yeah.
extremely painful. That maybe you just need to sit with those emotions and have a bad day. And I think that if you give people permission to do that and to go through again those shadows and the darkness, then you kind of organically come to the realization yourself that you don't want to be in that space anymore. You give yourself permission to feel through those layers, and if you actually go through the layers, you know, a lot of support on the other. There's a lot of
Yeah.
positivity.
I'm glad that you added that actually, because that definitely is part of it, you know. And I think the reason why people get upset with spiritual people or even just more optimistic people is like they're like, "Oh, I'm having a bad day." Don't have a bad day. Have a great day. You can choose it, right? And you know that's good, but people do need to feel their feelings. If you ignore your feelings, it's the same thing as again sweeping it under the rug, just putting on, a happy face. So yeah, it's a good point. You do have to sit in those uncomfortable feelings, and I think that's why a lot of people don't want to do the work because they don't want to sit in those uncomfortable feelings, which I understand, but you got to do it eventually.
Gotta do it. And what I often see is kind of two categories, and they're both extremes. And it's like you'll either, go all the way to this other side over here, or you're gonna like dip your toe into the feeling, and then you don't like the feeling, so you come back out. You dip your toe into the feeling, you don't like the feeling, so you come back out, and you never really fully go into that feeling. And so then you're always kind of stuck in this like low vibration of like negativity, trying to heal, but not really enough to actually get there. And so you're on this extreme of, either complete avoidance or, the the violence, the anger, those sorts of things.
I think it's
So
all. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, go all the way into it, go through the feelings, go into the shadow, go into the darkness, go all the way until there's nothing left. That's what I always say.
And it's
Yeah.
always important to add too that, I feel like healing work is never done. So you might be totally great for months. You're like, oh, I'm high vibrational. I'm in the fifth dimension. Let's party. But then something could happen, like potentially almost drowning in the ocean. And then maybe you're kind of back to square one. And that's okay too. Again, it's kind of like the striving for perfection or to say, I'm fully healed. Like, I'm all good over here. But, things happen. Sometimes you slip up and you kind of regress and you just got to get back on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost like, at times we can get to this space where we do think like, oh, we're so life is so perfect and beautiful and yeah, and then the universe will throw you that curveball.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, the antidote to that is just like continuing to keep humility involved there and recognize that you are a human and that not in a state of like hypervigilance, like waiting for the next thing to happen, but just like that sense of gratitude of like, how beautiful it is to be alive here and to take it every day, one day at one moment at a time, and to just keep my heart open, even though sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's beautiful, but here it is, and I'm humble and open to what God is giving me. Yeah.
So, you're this is a little bit random, but you're located in like Southern California, right?
Right, I'm out here in Venice. Mhm.
So, were you affected by the fires at all?
I would say yes. I mean, thank God I still have my home and nothing like that. I did have several friends who completely lost everything, and so it's very tragic. And I think like the greatest effect is just on the community and witnessing the pain that a lot of people have gone through, and the collective trauma that we're sharing together. There's definitely a lot of dust and debris in the air, which makes things hard. And so like I started noticing today I was doing yoga and I was feeling like the physical effect in my lungs of just like a phlegm there. And so there's obviously millions of people that live here. And so in some way, some of us a lot more so and some of us less so, but I think everybody has affected by this and it's definitely in the back of our minds, you
It's
know.
so devastating. And one thing that bothered me a bit was when this was all happening, there was people saying a bunch of different things. Some people were saying, "Oh, somebody started the fires, or it's energy weapons from the government starting the fires. They did it on purpose." And although we should know the origin of all this, but at the same time, it's like first let's focus on helping people. Let's focus on this is a real problem, and then figure out the cause. Because I think it's just kind of disrespectful to be like, oh, it's the energy weapons, or it's the Trump supporters starting fires. It's just disrespectful. Like people have lost everything.
Yeah.
absolutely everything. Like, have some compassion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's really easy to want to find the bad guy and persecute them for the instead of recognizing there's people in a lot of pain, and can you hold that pain? And I could see how it would be easier to go to, instead of holding your pain, let's blame someone for that pain. And so that's kind of the same idea that I was talking about earlier of like, there are no victims, right? There's only creators. And so bad things will happen to us and it's a shame. And taking accountability and ownership of our feelings and our ability to hold space for other people, um, and to not go right into that space of blaming or persecuting anybody else. And even if that's true, then that's more of a reason for you to open your heart, and to generate more love, from that energy versus something that's a little bit more uh, mean.
Yeah. But yeah, it's awful. And I told you before, I lived in Southern California for maybe like 4 or 5 years, and there was one time when there was a horrible fire, and, I was going to college at the time, and I was on my way to school in, San Marcos, actually, and I remember being on this bridge, and there was, like, black smoke coming over the bridge. I'm like, "What the hell is going on?" I'm not a California native, so I didn't know what the hell was going on. I get to campus, and people are, like, running off the campus, and I stopped somebody. I was like, "What's happening?" They're like, "There's a fire, like, we have to go. People need to evacuate, like, these different areas." And my friend that I was carpooling with, the town she lived in was one of the areas that needed to evacuate. So I went with her to help her pack. And we're driving, and then there's airplanes literally going right over our cars, dropping, I don't know what they drop, like powder. I honestly don't know what it is. But there's airplanes like literally right over the car. And I'm like, oh my God, like it was the scariest thing. Luckily, she was fine. We're all fine. But I just could never imagine something like that. And then even, people in North Carolina are still being affected by the hurricanes, like really bad. I've seen videos of people sleeping in tents and it's like snowing. And it's just, is anybody going to do anything?
Yeah, yeah. I think that it's just so important to be kind these days, to help our
Yeah.
fellow citizens out any way we can, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, these natural disasters and these kind of end of the world things that are coming up. Yeah, it almost feels like that stuff's probably going to get a little bit worse before it gets better, is the impression that I get of it. And so, you know, yeah, helping people in whatever way we can, right? Whether that's financially or through your time volunteering, giving away goods and resources, things like that, of course. But the biggest way that you can help humanity is by helping yourself, by doing this inner work, by showing up grounded, by showing up present, clear, and free of your emotional baggage and trauma that you might project onto other people. Because I think that that's much more damaging and insidious than some of these more obvious things that are happening sometimes. And so, on a collective global scale and a high level, that is the biggest way that we can transform this world. And yeah, I mean, if you want to get into like deeper theories and things like that, it's, as I'm speaking about that, it's almost like the earth, and it's such a representation of this atmosphere. And so there's a I think maybe one day we're going to realize there's a collective thought, energy, and field, right, that we're projecting out there, and that humans are not separate from this environment, and vice versa. And so it's all kind of playing in together. And some of these bigger storms that we're seeing, you know, could be the result of storms of our emotions and the ancestral trauma that we've repressed and things like that.
That's an amazing point because, I feel like collectively, a lot of people do feel like it's the end of the world. They're like, oh my gosh, like everything is wrong, everything is so bad. And then, of course, there could be physical manifestations outside of our own body. I definitely agree. And what's interesting, too, though, at least talking about the hurricanes that hit the East Coast really bad. Um, Around the time of that, we had 2 super moons. So super moons are when, like, the moon is closer to the earth than usual. We know the moon affects the tides. So it's
Right.
also interesting when you pay attention to the planets and how obviously our solar system affects us as well. So when you know all these things like your emotions, what's going on in the world, the planets, it's really amazing to really put it all together.
It's one big simulation, right?
Yeah. It's it's so funny. Sometimes I'll look at my hands and I'm like, how did I get here? What is going on? And it's just so funny, like this face, like you know what I mean? I just have these moments of like
It's pretty,
existential
pretty
awareness.
it's pretty trippy sometimes. It's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Yeah. So Southern California's or like how do you like do you just work from home? Do you have like a shop, an office?
Yeah, I'm sitting in the office right now. I will see some of my clients here. I have a little space for that. Most of my work is on Zoom and on the internet.
Mhm.
So I see people from all around. I have clients in New Zealand and Europe and America, obviously. And so, yeah, it's
Yeah, that's
beautiful.
the best part. Yeah, that's the best part of doing this work online is you
Mhm.
can meet so many different kinds of people. How do you get clients? Like just mostly from online or do you like talk to people, do
Uh,
ads in the newspaper?
yeah, various ways. I mean, some of them are from my community, from my local area. Other people I've met online through friends of friends or other clients or just the content that I post. You're speaking out your message and it's resonating with a certain person, and you guys end up connecting. I think that there's a myriad of ways that it can happen these days, and I think that for anybody who's curious about that, it's just understanding who you are, what your frequency is, and then just letting that authentically come out of you. And so, these days I have been, focused on content because I believe that it's such an instrumental form, a medium to connect with people. And we almost have like a sacred duty to put it out. It's just the way that we work these days. And so, yeah, I feel like it's really important to continue to make these messages, these conversations, broadcast that to anybody who's listening and resonates with these messages. And there's a lot of tangents I could go on here, but I've found that not holding back on that is so key because you're not going to be for everybody. I'm not going to be for everybody, and that's okay with me because I'm for the people that I'm supposed to be for. And there's a certain resonance to that message and a need there that I can fulfill and they can fulfill for me. So yeah, it's for anybody who's listening to that and maybe they're just starting to come onto this journey. I would say keep going, keep being authentic, understand who you are, and really just be true to you because I think many healers out there as there are people, and so we need everybody to come online, maybe online, or
Yeah.
just whatever form that takes, in your relationship, job, whatever that is, to just continue to be you and to let your heart out and to be true to your voice. So
Mhm.
yeah,
I love
that's
it.
my
Love
that's
it.
my team.
I feel like that's almost a perfect like ending point.
All right.
Authenticity, be yourself. I think, I think the most happy, successful, and aligned people are just going to be people being themselves. I think, we're born and we have all these weird quirks and things that we like. And then we go to school, we're told to sit down, be quiet, don't do that. That's not normal. This is normal. And so we kind of like lose ourselves sometimes. So I think that is important. And that's why I talk about weird things. And, a lot of times, even, so I recently kind of moved back to Virginia where I'm from, and it's just a very conservative, which is not a problem, but it's just a very like normal area. Like most people are not open to chakras or basically if I talk about it, most people think I'm some crazy witch, but I still talk about it. And I'm like, you know what, you liked me as a person. Now I'm talking about weird stuff. What's your move? you know?
That's beautiful. Yeah, we all have something to learn from everyone else, and the work that you and I do, it's one perspective, it's one lens into the divine, and that there's no better one. It's the one that you're connected. And I made a post about this recently, but like some of the most spiritual people I know are like have kids and a mortgage and just working normal life, 9 to 5. Like
Yeah.
it's about that embodiment and the presence that you bring to it, and so beautiful. Yeah. I hope you learn a lot from those normies out there.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely do. But thank you again so much for being on. And you guys, I'll be sure to link his video on the shadow code in the description box below. And be sure to also check him out on YouTube and Instagram. But thank you again so much, Mark.
Yep. Thank you, Nia. Great to be here.
All right, take care.
All right. Bye.
Bye.